more. Like, we're low-key going up right now. My name's Joshua Potts, also known as Mr. Pottsable, always with the brother with the same mother, Aaron Potts, Super Hot Potts, and one of your favorite two black runners coming at you every single
Two Black Tuesday. Yes, sir. We out here with
Bruh,
boy
special is an
MJ.
understatement. Like, honestly, like, the person, like, you guys already know. Like, that's why we titled the video. Like, 2 weeks ago, we announced who we were going to have on the podcast. Like, Aaron was saying, this is probably the biggest podcast that we ever had. And, like, it's kind of crazy. We're still on our way to 52 straight episodes. And it's so great that, like, as we getting more and more, we're able to get bigger guests, better people. So first off, I just want to say thanks to all the listeners out there because y'all really been loyal. Y'all been with us since the beginning. And like, honestly, this still is just the beginning. And it really is an honor, bro. So like Aaron always says, like, make sure you guys rate the podcast, subscribe, share with a friend, and especially this one because Aaron, like, bro, we got a great guest. It's Michael Johnson, but yeah, he's a 3-time Olympian. He's only won gold at the Olympics. Let's put that out there. He was on a 58 win streak in the 400. After 93, he didn't lose the 400. He was basically unbeatable. Like, let me tell you that. He's an 8-time world champion, the only person in the Olympics to win the 400 and 200 double, and he did in the world championships too. Like, no biggie. Like, he's a certified GOAT, a former world record holder in the 200 and the 400. Like, those records looked unbeatable. Like, golly, there's too much to be said, but he's on the podcast. So really, like, Michael Johnson, like, how are you doing? I don't even know how to greet you, like, to be honest. Like, how are you doing today on this day? Like, how are you doing in February?
I'm doing good. Doing better after that intro. I appreciate it. Are you available for hire, man? I mean, like when I go and do like corporate motivational, events, can
Hey,
I, you could be that hype guy, man, come out in the front,
call me. I'll be there. I'll be there. Absolutely, I'll be there. That would be
Nah.
amazing. But it truly is the honor to have you on the podcast. Like we said, like a certified GOAT. We had Dalila Muhammad on the podcast at the end of 2020, and to see what she's been doing, like you've like Dalila Muhammad is a great athlete. Like, don't get me wrong, but what you have done for track and field in the 90s really set a precedent. And like, there's been people that have tried to do what you have done, and like there hasn't a lot of people that have come close to what you've done in the 400 and 200. But we want to talk about that track stuff, but we also want to get to know you a little bit more on this podcast. So it's definitely just going to be a great thing. So but we kind of just want to start because 2020 was crazy, and I don't think we can really ignore that. And 2021 hasn't it's changed a little bit for the better, at least I would say for sure. But just like, what was one good thing from 2020 that you could take away from it last year?
Yeah, certainly 2020 has been incredibly challenging for everyone. And but throughout the whole pandemic, from a business standpoint, with my different businesses, I try to encourage my team, hey, let's try to look for opportunities, here, opportunities that might come out of this hardship and this difficulty that we're experiencing. And my company, Michael Johnson Performance, one of my companies anyway, we're in the business of training and supporting athletes in all different sports. And we had a lot of athletes who were sort of stuck out there. We had when the pandemic hit last year, we had about 60 prospective NFL athletes that were trying to get ready for the NFL pro days and combines and nowhere to train. So, we were able to support them remotely, which was we were very proud of our ability to help them with that, and that was a positive that we were able to, give them the sort of training and support they needed with all of that uncertainty, as well as some of the
Yeah.
Olympic athletes as well that we support that were. When the pandemic first started, they didn't know, if there was going to still be an Olympics or not. And you
Yeah.
wonder, well, is everybody else training and I don't have access to training? So we were able to support a lot of them remotely. So that was good to be able to support athletes that were really absolutely going through a difficult time.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, especially at 2020 was really hard for everybody, but especially those athletes with those aspirations to go on to better and better things. A lot of things had to go on pause, and that athletic career definitely it can anything can change at any moment. And so for something to really hold everybody was disappointing, especially from a fan's point as well. Now, Michael, when we were talking about like that big pause in 2020, another big pause where people really had to reflect was just on all the social unrest and the social injustices that were happening last year as well, starting with the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, then George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And there was just a lot of stuff going on in the US and especially around the world. But one of the things that I really saw from you was when you posted on Instagram and really describing like your thoughts and your feelings towards it. And I kind of just want you to explain your reaction, how you were feeling, because I remember you stating how like you felt like this was like the most momentum you ever seen for this movement. And like you've been around for a minute. You've been around for a minute and seen a lot. So what was just like your response and your reaction to what you were seeing last year surrounding the social unrest and the social injustices that were happening?
Yeah, I think just like a lot of people, around the time of Ahmaud Arbery's murder, it was just frustration that here we go again with another senseless and unnecessary and unjust situation where a black man has been targeted by in this case, white men who weren't even police officers. And I think there was just a sense by many people, and certainly myself included, that as soon as this happens, then it's already starting to get sort of be set up for how they're going to be able to get away with this.
Yeah. Hmm.
And which is a tremendous amount of frustration because we've seen it so many times. And I think obviously George Floyd's murder coming right behind that. Right when we're right in the middle of this pandemic, I think there was something about the fact that people were at home, during that time and not, able to sort of carry on our normal lives and busyness that made us pay even more attention to that situation. But I think that there was also something also that was different about George Floyd's murder. On the same day, if you remember, there was the situation in Central Park with the woman, Amy Cooper, the white woman that called the
Yeah. Yeah.
police, and falsely claimed that this black man was attacking her, and knowing that she had, and it just showed, and it was all captured on cell phone video. And what it did was just showed that she knew she had this privileged position over this black man and that she could weaponize that privileged position and use it against him unjustly as well. And I think that really got people's attention. It just so happened that it happened on the same day. I think another thing that was really interesting about that as well, I heard Ava DuVernay, the producer, made a very interesting point. She said, typically when these things happen and a black person is murdered by the police, we only see the picture because it's like a camera from the policeman's off a position or something like that. We don't see the face of the police officer. But in this situation, when that police officer had his knee on George Floyd's neck, that picture, that video just showed George Floyd's face and this white man's face at the same time with his knee on this man's neck. And it just made it brought out a different emotion in people. So I think
Hmm.
all of that conspired to make people just, sort of rise up in a way that I haven't ever seen before. And so there was just this tremendous amount of momentum around social injustice and the difference in this country between black people and white people that's been there forever but has been highlighted now in a way that we hadn't seen before. So hopefully that momentum continues and it wasn't just a moment, and we'll see.
Yeah, I can definitely say I do feel like it has woken a lot of people up that were definitely asleep, that didn't realize like how bad this thing really is. It's like so bad that a white woman in confidence can, believes that she can call the police on a black man and something's gonna happen to him. Like she's like, this is a threat to his life. He gonna be scared if I'm saying this. And I would also want to ask you, like, with Ahmed Aubrey, the fact that he was out running, I feel like that made such a big impact on the running world. And when we look in the past, we think about Jesse Owens at the Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos at the 1968 Olympics. Track has played an integral part in social movement in the US. How do you feel about the running communities? How do you feel about the running community's response to everything, and how we've handled the situation as a running community so far?
Yeah, I think, I think we can, it's been a tremendous outpouring of support for Ahmaud Arbery because he was running when it happened. And it's something that we all know and something we've all done. Um, but I think we can always do more, and I
Hmm.
think that, what we've seen though over the last year from the entire sporting community has been incredible. When you think about people who are like, you know, LeBron James, WNBA, the NBA, what they did last year, Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One champion,
Yeah.
using their platform. And these are people with huge platforms, out there being courageous and using their platforms to speak out against racism and speak out against the social injustices that we're seeing. And I think what it has done is given a lot of other athletes who don't have necessarily as big a platform some space, some sort of feeling like, okay, there's some safe space for me to use my platform as well. And I think that that's been really really powerful. I think what we saw last year from the WNBA, working together to really, oust one of their own owners from a Senate seat,
Yeah.
and get someone, help get someone elected to come in there that, is aligned with their views of where the country should be going, as opposed to someone who's on, the other side of that, and many of us would argue the wrong side of that. I think that was amazing to see. So I think the sporting community has been really, really instrumental in leading um, on these issues.
And just speaking on like that platform, I think it's kind of crazy because me and Aaron, we can't really understand the magnitude of that platform. And I think that you're like the perfect person, especially in the running community, that could understand like what comes with that and the weight. Because like I said in the beginning of the intro, like you're a certified GOAT, like for sure, like in that conversation. So could you kind of just speak on like what was it like once you were able to get like that platform, and like what were like the pressures that came with that if you were trying to stay within a box, or like trying to stay, yeah, try and get out of the box? What was it like trying to manage that platform and trying to use what you want to be heard, like for the good or the betterment of whatever issues that you want to speak on?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, you can only look back to, you know, throughout history and see when athletes have used their platform to speak out on any sort of social issues or any political issues. It's always risky. You look at what happened to Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Yeah.
They were banned, from the Olympic team after that, and penalized. You look at Gwen Berry,
Hmm.
just a couple of years ago in 2018, punished for taking a stand. And I think athletes have always known that. And I mean, we've always known when you have sponsors, companies who, don't want to rub anyone wrong or get any sort of bad publicity or negative publicity. And of course, the biggest one is Colin Kaepernick. You know, right now, you've got people applauding, Colin Kaepernick and companies. But, at the time, he was blackballed basically from the NFL,
Yep.
and people, athletes will see that and will know that, yeah, there is a danger to speaking out. You have this platform, but um, you know, you, you have to be very careful in terms of what you use it for, because there could be a price to pay. And I think, I I heard, saw the other day that Kara Goucher tweeted that, you know, there are all of these people, you know, her followers on social media saying basically that, they always saw sports as a outlet from all the political issues, and so they're not happy with her for speaking out and using her platform to talk about social issues, because
Hmm.
they don't want her talking about that. They look to her for, entertainment, and they're releasing their breakaway from all of these things.
Yeah.
And she made the comment that, well, this is who I've always been. And I thought that that was interesting because, you know, my response was, there are some things that you shouldn't want to be breaking away from. There are some things that you shouldn't be wanting to, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to, talk about social injustice. Well, it's very convenient for you,
Yeah.
but we got to live this, so yeah, I think that, it's, athletes know that, that there is a danger to it. And that's why I think that it's been great to see some of the really big names who have a huge platform, really speaking out and using their platform, and now other athletes will feel safer in doing so. And I think that you're starting to see it. I mean, obviously, Nike's, one of my partners, and been
Mm.
with that company forever. But I was very, very happy to see them sticking with Colin Kaepernick throughout this entire situation. And when you see companies starting, big corporations starting to get on board and support athletes in their outspoken nature to support these issues, that it gives it even more a legitimacy, but also gives athletes a feeling of relief and feeling of safeness that they can actually speak out without being outcast and without being penalized for it.
Yeah, it's a scary thing when you run for Team USA and you're afraid to, talk bad against them or anything that's, not saying that they're the best for everything they do. One thing just shortly I wanted to touch on too is like what you're saying with Kara Goucher. It's funny to me when people say like to someone like Kara Goucher too, it's like I come to you to escape, to politics. Like I don't want to hear that. But I feel like most of the people that say that, it's like you're not even having to escape. You don't have to escape politics. Like you're already privileged. Like what are you escaping? Like
Hmm.
for someone that is black, for example, like you can't really escape politics. Like it's a part of your life, and it's gonna uh it's gonna either give you disadvantages from how this country was made. We could go deeper into that, but that's another podcast. I also wanted to talk to you too, because like you've been very vocal. I feel like some people don't notice, but you're very vocal on Twitter and on Instagram about the things that you're passionate about. And one of those things is track and field. And you recently spoke up about the quality of the first American track league, which has since then improved dramatically. And it's been amazing to see that develop. But I just wanted to ask you, like, have you always been like into that entertainment aspect of the sport? Because I see you talk about it a lot.
Yeah, no, yeah, I have. I think, obviously, I owe everything I have to this sport, so
Hmm.
I love it, like nothing else. And I've always, since I retired from the sport, I'm obviously a fan of the sport, and love the sport for everything that offers, and very supportive of the athletes that have come after me. And I see these athletes, out there, the most amazing athletes, the most amazing performances. And it's frustrating that people don't know and people don't appreciate how amazing these athletes are. And and what's frustrating for me is when people who are also fans will blame those people for not understanding and saying it's a shame they don't understand. Well, if you don't provide it, a platform for them to be able to see and appreciate how amazing the athletes in track and field are, then you can't blame those people. You can't blame
Yeah.
sports fans. You can't blame people for not being able to appreciate what they don't see and what isn't presented to them. So it's always a source of frustration for me. It's a source of frustration for me when I see amazing athletes in this sport who are, incredibly gifted, working really hard, some of the best athletes in the world, and they can't make a living. That's frustrating,
Hmm.
and this sport has just been so stuck for so long, between being a professional sport and being an amateur sport,
Yeah.
when these athletes, are professional in terms of their commitment, in terms of their talent, in terms of their hard work. and dedication to this sport. But the sport keeps them stuck in this sort of semi-professional, somewhat amateur, somewhat professional state, and that's a shame.
Before we get back to the podcast, I wanted to jump in and just thank our sponsor, Tracksmith, one more time for partnering with the Two Black Runners podcast. It truly is an honor to have them on board and really just trying to bring us to the next level. And especially Tracksmith, because this Boston-based running brand is born out of the desire to celebrate both the history and the evolving culture of running. So with us, like the Running Report as well, we're here to inspire the next generation and just trying to keep on pushing the sport forward with Tracksmith. And since we align so much together, I feel like with Tracksmith and Running Report, they are offering our listeners $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more when you use the code CULTURE15 at tracksmith.com. That's CULTURE numbers 15. Use the code CULTURE15 at tracksmith.com and get $15 off your first purchase of $75. What I really like how you said, like, there's sport fans that don't understand what's going on. Because I was thinking about today on my run before we came on here, like, man, like, because we're going to talk eventually about like the golden age of people called like track and field back in the 90s when you were running, when there's so many great athletes that had so much longevity. And I feel like these 20s could have like that same thing with the stars of like a Michael Norman and definitely like a Grant Holloway and a Sidney McLaughlin and a Noah Lyles. Like if they're able to withstand and that longevity comes for over these next 10 years, we could have that similar thing. And like the sport fans not realizing, like last 2 weeks have been crazy in track and field. And like Grant Holloway, when he ran that 7:32 and the 60-meter hurdles, he was number 6 on SportsCenter top 10. And I'm all like, how is that number 6 on SportsCenter top 10? Like this man just got an American record, and Steph Curry doing a behind the back pass is better than that. I'm all like, that doesn't even make sense. So like the complete like just understanding, like I don't understand how a dunk can be better than a better than an American record. Like it really doesn't comprehend to me. Like if you're going to show it, like at least put it number 1. You know what I mean? Yeah, that was just me on my soapbox real quick. But I also just wanted to ask, like, becoming like a fan of the sport, like where did that really like come? Did you start becoming a fan when you were a kid, or was it when you become older where you really like sought out and wanted to like watch track and field and be entertained by it?
I mean, it started with, from a participation standpoint, just,
Okay.
playing all sorts of sports growing up in South Dallas, in Texas, just we were playing sports all of the time. We were running, we are just racing all of the time. And I mean, I love sports. I played all kinds of sports growing up, but track was always, special for me. It was just something about running. And I wasn't necessarily a fan from the standpoint of watching it on TV because I didn't see it that much on TV. It was just participating in the sport. I just loved it. And as I got older and started to get into, my high school, college career for sure, started to then study a lot of the different athletes and sprinters in particular that came
Mm-hmm.
before me and start getting familiar with, people like Tommy Smith and John Carlos and Jesse Owens and just, started going down that rabbit hole, man. And just, next thing you know, I'm just like, looking for any information I can find on all of these different sprinters back in the day, the Bob Hayes and all of these different folks. And yeah, and just, I've always loved it. And of course, having had the privilege of being able to be a professional in the sport and being exposed to it throughout, the late 80s, as I was spectating and watching while I was in high school and college, and then in the 90s being in my own career, just continue to fall in love more and more and more with this sport.
Who were some runners that you were watching in the 80s that you kind of looked up to, or someone you kind of like modeled your sprint tactics after, or anyone that was like you saw yourself in when you were younger?
So, I mentioned Tommy Smith, who, was, people always talk about, me being the first male athlete, or you'll hear people even say, oh, Michael was the first athlete to double in the 2 and the 4, which is not true.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Smith was a great 400-meter runner, and 200-meter runner. And so I always looked up to him and sort of thought about, Tommy, just looking at his career. Obviously, he was long retired when I started my career. And then there was Valerie Briscoe, 84, 200, 400. I mean, Valerie was amazing as an athlete as well, and had doubled as well. So as much as I like the fact that people always talk about me being the first,
Mhm.
I was far from the first. Now, I was able to obviously do something that Tommy wasn't able to win. That he won the 200 at the Olympics, didn't run the 400. Lee Evans won that Olympics in '68 in the 400. But I obviously, respected those athletes and thought, yeah, that's, it was Tommy Smith was my inspiration behind not being just stuck as a 200-meter runner. I thought,
Uh,
yeah, I can be a great 400-meter runner as well. And knowing that he had never had a championship, hadn't run both, but he had run both in his career and ran fast in both. That was an inspiration for me.
then also speaking a little bit more on just how like that entertainment side of the sport, like right after you retired, you stayed in the sport, but you stayed into the sport on the side of like entertainment, and then well managing and entertainment as well. Just was there always when you were coming out in 2000 and 2001, did the thought starts creeping in your mind like I want to stay in this sport and eventually I want to start commentating with BBC? Was like were those things that you were already thinking about before I can stay in and try and make the sport better, try and bring more to the sport after I leave?
I mean, I always knew that I would stay involved in sports. When I started my sports performance company, you know, business was always, I studied business in university when I went to Baylor. That's what I got my degree in. I've always been intrigued by business. So I knew when I retired that, you know, entrepreneurship would be something that I would
Mm,
pursue. And sports has always been a passion of mine. So uh, in forming Michael Johnson Performance, I was able to bring those two together. Um, Track and field as a sport is a very difficult sport to it's a difficult sport, to compete in and make a living. It's an even more difficult sport to try to sustain any sort of business around. So I, expanded out, in terms of my business, to be a business about sports and to help athletes in sport. And I had a lot of connections in NFL and that allowed me to build my business a lot on that sport and then expand into other sports and including track and field as a sport as well. So that certainly was something that I wanted to pursue and have been fortunate to have a great deal of success with that. And in terms of my television punditry, and being a television commentator, it's the same thing. Um, you know, if I was just a track commentator, it would be a really difficult
yeah.
career to build. So being able to expand out in my role with BBC and cover other different things outside of just track and field has allowed me to be able to have success as a television pundit, and then but allowed me to stay involved in the sport of track and field as well.
Yeah, and I would say too, like MJ, like everybody know you. Like you're bigger than the sport. Like that's the type. That's why we're so excited to have you too. It's just like you are one of those athletes that people people recognize that might not know much about track, especially in your era. Like I feel like we're gonna get to this later. I feel like you were like to us like how Bolt was like you were that big. You were that guy, fastest man in the world, 4'2", crazy. So that's cool to hear that. But I want to ask you, what is like one thing if you could just add, one spice to track and field to kind of help it out and take it to the next level? What would that be? What do you think is like one of the main missing pieces that is constant in our sport?
It's unfortunately it's going to take way more than one thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and you know
Most
what?
definitely.
And I'm gonna preface this with saying this. I mean, like you guys touched on it earlier. There was a lot going on Twitter, which is not the best format for debate, to be honest. But there was a lot going on Twitter. Back when that first American Track League meeting came on, and I made the comment that hey, it's good to see track and field back on TV, but this telecast is not great, and I hope it gets better. And and there was a lot of debate around that. And And what I've come to realize is that, I come from a perspective when it comes to track and field. All of those people on that debate, all of those people that were talking, all those people on Twitter, the one thing we all have in common, we all care about this sport. We all love this sport. We all want to see these great athletes be celebrated. We want to see them, not behind Steph Curry's dunk, on Sports Center, but number
Come
one when you
on.
break a world record. We all want to see those
Yes.
things, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Having established that, I know my perspective is probably a bit different. For one, for me, I can say, I don't know what anyone else's perspective is, but my perspective comes from a place of I'm always striving for excellence, always. That's how I went about my career. That's why I attribute a lot of my success and that consistency, over those years to focusing on excellence. I mean, this is going to sound a little bit arrogant, and maybe I could have won some of those championships without running as fast as I did. But I probably
Mhm.
wouldn't have won some of those championships if I wasn't focused on being the best I can be. That excellence, be the best I can be, run the fastest race I can run. That's what I was focused on, as opposed to, well, how fast do I have to run to beat Otto Bolton? Or
Yeah.
how fast do I have to run to beat Frankie Fredericks?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not excellence. So I was focused on excellence. So when it comes to my business, we hold ourselves, I hold us to a very high standard. We're always focusing on excellence. If we don't achieve excellence, no, we're not killing ourselves. We're not, dogging ourselves, but we're not happy. We're not satisfied with that. So when I think about this sport, and I think about where it should be and where I would like to see it be, how I would like to see it presented, good enough isn't enough,
Exactly.
or
True.
just being happy that, hey, you know what? I'm not built that way to look at a television production on TV where it's, not very good at all and it's not highlighting and shining on these athletes in the way that they deserve to be. I can't look at that and say, well, it's good that we even just have some track on TV. So that's cool. That's not me.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Yeah.
built that way. Right. And I think that, so my perspective as well comes from, having successfully built businesses, having been fortunate to have a financially successful career in this sport, which is rare. And then having been around professional sports, when I was competing as an athlete in the sport, my best friend played in the NFL. My group of closest friends, two other of those played in the NFL at the time. So I'm comparing myself to them and I'm seeing how they're being treated as professional athletes. And it's like, well, I'm a professional athlete as well. They're looking up to me saying, man, you're the best in the world. All
Yeah.
right. Well, so if I'm the best in the world, right? And, you know, got friends that's playing in the NFL and they sitting on the bench in their sport, you know, but they're making more money than me. And then we go to the club, everybody knows who they are and they don't know who I am. Something's wrong,
That
right?
is.
True.
Something's wrong,
That's
No,
a
right?
problem. That's an
Something's
issue.
wrong.
that is definitely the
But ain't
problem.
nobody gonna do anything about that but me. I'm the only one. It's not dude at the club not knowing who I. It's not his fault that he don't know because he don't. When he turns on TV on Sunday, he's gonna see these guys playing on in the NFL. He ain't gonna see me. That's not his fault,
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
know. Um, so I've always understood that, and I've always appreciated that you're going to get what you go out there and get. Value is important. If you provide value to ESPN, to Sports Center, then they're
Yeah.
going to make you the number one top 10 play because you're providing value. At the end of the day, they got to show value to their viewers. If their
100%.
viewers, if their viewers love the NBA, then that dunk is always going to go ahead of a world record,
You
right?
That's
preaching.
It's
ridiculous.
all about value and it's all about marketing.
And
I was
and
part of an investment group. We bought the Dallas Mavericks back in the 90s and then we sold them. I learned watching from that side as well, being an owner in a sports team, how it was all about marketing. We have to show value to sponsors. We have to show value to television. I was NBA has the NBA owners have a competition committee every year. They're meeting. I was part of some of these meetings. Every year, they're meeting trying to figure out, well, how do we make this product more effective, better for the viewers, better for the fans, better for television, so we can continue to charge more money. We're not doing that in track and field. We're not doing that in track and field. So my perspective is completely different. I understand that in order to get sponsors, in order to get television, you have to make yourself valuable and you have to understand what people want to see. It's not about just about us as the track fans. We we'll watch every second of
Yeah.
the 10,000 meters, and we want
Yeah.
to see it, and we want it on TV. Okay, you can put that on TV, but you go out and ask all of these people out here in that 18 to 34-year-old targeted demographic, do you want to see every second of a 10,000 meters? If the answer is yes, then great, put that on TV. If the answer is no, you got to make some hard decisions. Say, hey, you know what, we're not going to do that. But as track fans, what we do is as soon as somebody says, hey, let's change something about the sport to make it better, no, we can't change it. No, let's not change it. Don't change it. Okay. So I kind of just sit back and I go, I mean, I know what sells, and I know that this ain't selling, and it's a shame for these athletes.
It definitely is a shame, and I think you hit every single nail on the head with everything you said right there. And I just also think like there's so much tweaking that we can do to our sport, because we can leave the Olympics and the World Championships how they are. That's tradition every single year. But throughout the year, whether it's making a track meet that's only sprints or distance, or we need like some people coming together, like meet directors coming together, like you're saying, like the NBA owners do. But like one of the biggest things with the American Track League, what upset me when I saw the first race was just like, if we don't make these track meets good, then like brands aren't gonna no one's gonna want to invest in it. Like if it's just for the track fans, like we have to make it palatable for everybody, especially if it's up against the NFL, the NBA. It has to be something that people want to watch, because it's like if you watch a track meet, and only 5 or 6 people in the 60 are actually sponsored, it's like there's so many brands out there, and it's like, bro, like why wouldn't you sponsor someone to run a race that's on ESPN? Because nobody watches the race. It's
Yeah.
like,
That's the question that you have to ask is, yeah, why are people not watching? Why does ESPN, why did ESPN not bring their own, production crew to televise, and to produce that meet? Everybody was
Yeah.
saying, hey, Paul Doyle took money out of his own pocket to do that. He shouldn't have to. That's what
Hmm.
we should be asking. You know, we should be asking, well, why did he have to? Why wasn't he able to get any sponsors? Why aren't any sponsors wanting to actually sponsor this track meet? These are professional athletes. They're amazing. They're the greatest in the world. Why doesn't anybody want to sponsor that track meet? Why are there athletes in here who can't find sponsors? We should be asking those questions. At the end of the day, though, in order for all of this to change, the sport, including athletes in the sport, the fans of the sport, the federations, all of us have to make some sacrifices. We're not going to be able to get everything that we want. As soon as World Athletics said, "Hey, you know what? We got to try to fit these one-day meetings into a tighter television window," which means that every event isn't going to be able, we're not going to be able to have every single event at these meets. People got outraged. No, you got to
Hmm.
have all of the events. You hear jumpers and field eventers saying, hey, you know what? We should be on TV more. We should have every jump on TV. I get it. I mean, that's your event and you're passionate about it, but that's just not practical. It is a I'm on that side as well. I've been in televised, as a commentator in track and field meets for 20 years. I understand how difficult it is to get all of these events on TV.
Hmm.
It's just impossible. It's impossible to do it. So to your point, Aaron, about, maybe you have meets that don't have all of the events, because I wonder as well if you're going to find people out there who really, truly, who's not a track fan, who's just a sports fan, are you going to bring them in? Are they really interested in watching, the fastest people in the world run races in, under 10 seconds, and also equally interested in watching people who are some of the most amazing endurance athletes run the 10,000 in 26 minutes, and then also some of the most amazing acrobats in the world pole vault, and then some of the most amazing and powerful jumpers jump to. Those are four different sports right
Yeah.
there that I just told you in one.
Yeah.
Those are four different sports. It's probably unlikely that you're going to bring a non-traditional track fan in who's going to say, "Yeah, I'm equally stoked to watch all four of those things."
Yeah, and I love that point. But before we move on, I wanna ask you like, what are you loving about the sport right now, and what's really getting you excited about it? Because I remember seeing you tweet because after the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix last Sunday, you were saying like the 60-meter dash was like it was a perfect way how they set it up, the commentating and just the graphics along with it. So what in the sport right now is that you're getting excited about, if that is from the athletes or the entertainment standpoint, where track is moving forward in a good direction?
I think the most exciting thing is you got some really, really exciting young athletes who can make a real mark on the sport. You got some great competition. When you think about, the sprints right now, with Trayvon Bromell, Andre DeGrasse, Michael Norman, Noah Lyles, all of those guys across all of the sprints, really exciting athletes. What I like to see is a combination of athletes with some great personalities, which we have right now. I mean, Noah Lyles is, amazing. He's
Hmm.
the first athlete that I have seen since Usain Bolt came into the sport who I think is really authentic in their personality. I've seen a lot of people try to be like, I want to be the next Usain Bolt, and they're trying to be like that, or their own version of that.
Yeah.
Noah Lyles, it feels authentic, like he is that's who he is, and that's refreshing. And from a marketing standpoint, whether it's sponsors or television or even fans, you can tell when it's authentic, and that's
Yeah.
authentic, and you can tell when it's not. And there's been a lot of fakers out there trying really hard, and it just does not come off well. But what's cool is when you have people like that, and who also at the same time are in, when you have great personalities, but when you have really good competition. And that's one of the things I think is a problem with this sport, is that we don't focus as much on this one amazing asset that we have, and that is great competition. That's
Hmm.
why I was tweeted about that 60, because it was set up so perfectly. As a viewer sitting back, you had this anticipation that was being built up as Otto Bolden was talking about, hey, this person, this is who they are, this is their resume, this is their accolades. This person was ranked number one in the world last year. This person's got the fastest time in the world this year. This person had the fastest qualifying time today. What that's doing is then setting up the viewer for, hey, I'm about to see some real competition here, as opposed to what we see a lot of times with the telecast of track and field, where you got 8 people in the lanes and the viewer doesn't know who's in all of those other lanes. They just keep talking about that one person in the middle, you
Yeah.
know, and then they may mention one other person, and then you'll quickly get the start list, you know. But if you're not familiar with the sport, you don't know who those people are on that start list or what they've done.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that we do to shoot ourselves in the foot is we keep talking about people breaking world records. Are we going to see a world record today? Are we going to see a world record? Oh, we might see a world record. That's probably not going to happen. And then it takes away from the huge asset that we have with the sport, and that is somebody's going to win this race.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And before that gun goes off, we don't know who that's going to be. But for as a viewer, the value is that, yeah, I'm gonna watch, because I'm gonna get to find out, and it's not gonna take that long. So we need to focus on that a little bit more. So when you have great competition, I think we have that right now in a lot of the events. Women's 400-meter hurdles, men's 400-meter hurdles, competition in those events is amazing. Women's 100-meter hurdles, always a lot of competition. They're always amazing to watch. And then Shawnee Miller-Weibo,
Yeah.
Sydney and Delilah in the 400-meter hurdles, and you got some personalities with that competition. 100 meters, Trayvon, DeGrasse, you know. So it's a lot. There's a lot to be excited about right now with the athletes. But look, I can tell you this too. With this sport, the problem has never been the athletes. The athletes always putting it down and always
Yeah.
giving you great performances. You know, we still have that. Now we got some really young talent in that space and with some great personalities and some good matchups. So hopefully, the sport can do its job and build off of that.
Hey,
All the
Aaron, that's
athletes.
where we come in. That's where we come in, Aaron.
Hey, no, yeah, that's definitely where we come in, and we're trying to grind, especially this year. The Olympics, God blessing, God willing, it looks like they're gonna happen. Can you talk about too, like how important is this Olympics for the world? Like you just named for the U.S. how many amazing athletes we have, but with everything we went through with COVID, 2020, social unrest, what do you think this Olympics could mean, like just for society?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think obviously this is a global issue that no part of the world hasn't been affected by this pandemic, and so it's like unlike anything else we've ever seen before, even world wars. There were areas of the globe that were untouched by those and not part of those, but in this situation, there's not any corner of this earth that wasn't affected by this pandemic. So and I think that, the Olympics are, the ultimate in global, competition and coming together of countries and representation of countries in sport, which is something that we know is incredibly powerful as a tool to bring people together and sort of, make people sort of put aside their differences for a minute. So I think that the Olympics certainly represents that, and it couldn't come at a better time. And I'm confident that there will be an Olympics this summer. Look, the IOC makes 75% of its revenue off of television rights. If there's no games, there's no television for those games, and that money ain't coming. So, so, so they're gonna, by one way or the other, they're gonna have that Olympics. And there may not be any fans in the stands, which is fine. It can be a made-for-television sort of event, but there will be an Olympics this summer, and I think you know athletes, in particular in the sport of track and field, are hungry for it and will be ready for it, and it'll be great to see. One of the things that I'm really just from a competition standpoint that I'm interested to see is last year was such a weird year, without a lot of competition. But I don't know if you guys noticed, like athletes ran some blazing fast times last year. I mean,
Yep,
some
yep.
really crazy fast times last year. And I kind of wondered, and I had this debate with some friends of mine, like, was it because there was no pressure? There's no championship to
Hmm.
get ready for. And if you don't run fast this year, it don't matter. If you lose, it doesn't matter. It was a pandemic. You didn't even have anywhere to train. So people ran some really fast times. Um, and those fast times will give you a hell of a lot of confidence going into this year. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we'll be in for some really, really good times. I mean, times are still important in this sport, and it just makes for great competition. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good summer. And then what we just saw, we've seen this indoor season already. You know, I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a really good season.
And one thing on that point, I think that's we see like the comparison of that, those people that raced a lot last year, like similar to like a Karsten Warholm that was able, he raced, I feel like he was racing pretty much every single weekend once he got into the summer and was able to get
Yeah.
so much closer and closer to that world record in the 400-meter hurdles. But then someone like a Grant Holloway was tucked away in the cave hibernating in 2020, comes out blazing American record. So it's going to be interesting. Definitely once like Daniel Roberts comes out and races Grant Holloway, and then when Rai Benjamin finally meets up and races against Karsten Warholm to see really where it's at. I'm really excited just for the fast times, and I'm excited just to report on it and see everything that goes down. To be honest, but we wanted to also just rewind real quick and just go back to your running as well. And just when was that time when you realized that like, man, I could have like a real future in that sport? Did that not come until when you were at Baylor? Was that before in high school? Or when was that time where you're like, I can have a future, I may be able to go pro and I could be great at this?
Yeah, I think I started to have I was late. It was my senior year of high school when I was being recruited. As, that I started to think, dream a little bit more about, maybe having a professional career, and even really realizing that there wasn't such thing as a professional career in track and field. I didn't even realize that before then.
Mm,
But then once I got to college and I started to really train and start to really get that, sort of, training and instruction that I was getting, at that level. I'd started to improve so rapidly, and I was making huge improvements. And that was just proof to myself, that, I mean, it wasn't just a dream anymore. Then it was backed up by times that I was running that, I legitimately can be one of the best out there and compete with the best, not just because I was dreaming it and I desired it, but because I was running the times that people who are on those world championships and Olympic teams in the last few years, I was running the same times they were running. So that was proof to me that yeah, I can have a career in the sport.
And what went into your decision to go to Baylor? We know the legendary coach Clyde Hart is there, and Joshua was saying, yeah, before we started, how our dad used like his program on us in club track, and he's trained Jeremy Warner, who you managed as well. What was it like being under his program?
Yeah, coach is just an amazing coach, and the model for all of the coaches that I employ now. Someone who has that ability to teach, as opposed to just we say at Michael Johnson Performance, anybody, any idiot with a stopwatch and a whistle can say I'm a coach, but at the
Yeah,
end of the day, you know, understanding how each athlete is different and how each athlete is motivated differently, they're inspired differently, and you have to sort of modulate your approach to building trust and with that athlete, based on who they are, and you got to meet them where they are as opposed to trying to make the athlete conform to your way of coaching and your style of coaching. You've got to work with them, and coach was just amazing at that. We had a true partnership, in our relationship, um, and I owe so much to him just from teaching me so much as an athlete. When I come to practice every day, instead of him saying, "Okay, this is what we're going to do today," he would ask me, "What do you think we're doing today?" And want me to guess, and then and I would say, "I think today we're going to do this," and he would say, "You're on the right track, but no, we're not doing that. We're doing this, and this is why." And I was learning that way,
Mhm.
how he was coaching me and what the training program, how it works, and and, and I understood that the better I understand why we're doing what we're doing and how he's developing the training program, the better I'm going to be able to execute it and the better results I'm going to have. And so it was just that was a really it was just a great relationship. Coach was very, just one of the hardest working coaches I've ever seen, always studying, always, even when he was coaching me, he had been coaching for 30 years, at that point already, and he was still trying to learn. And, even, right now, still coaching, today,
Crazy.
he's still learning, and trying to, he'll call me and ask me, "Hey, I saw this, what do you think about this?" And it's just it's he's an amazing person, an amazing coach, and he's been great for my business, teaching my coaches how to be great coaches as well.
yeah, no, I like what you said there too. Like he was very like invested in you. Like if you're able to go up to your coach and guess what you're doing, and he can just tell you like, "Oh, you're on the wrong track," but here's exactly why. He's like honestly kind of teaching you how to coach, and he's also showing you that this program is built for you. Like I'm planning out your present and your future. But I wanted to ask you too, how did you get into the four? Was he the one that converted you like, hey, because I know you were running the 200 a lot. Was he the one that was like, you're going to be a great 400 guy?
No, I mean, so in high school I was 200 and 100, but I loved being on the 4x400 meter relay. I ran lead off on our 4x4. I was always running fast times. That was part of the reason, even though I was running fast times in the two, but I was running fast lead offs on the 4x4, and coaches saw that I had that potential. When I got to Baylor, I knew that I could run the four, and I would run it every now and then, and I would run fast in it. I just didn't run it that much because in college, as you guys know, I mean, you're always getting ready for something. So,
Yeah.
indoor season comes, you got to get that qualifying time for nationals. Then you got to get
Mhm.
ready for a conference. And then, and right after conferences, nationals, then you go outdoors, you got to get that qualifying time, and then you got to get ready for conference and you got to be ready for nationals and you're running relays. You just can't go back and forth between the two and the four like I wanted to.
Yeah.
and I was trying to, so you got to pick one really in college. It's just really difficult. If you're doing 1 and 2, you can, but 2, 4, you can't
Yeah,
do that in college. But I wanted to. I knew I could be fast in the 400. I knew I could run. I ran the 400 outdoors. I ran the 400 3 times total in college. I ran
that's
45:23,
crazy.
as a sophomore in college. But you got to choose. So I chose the 200, and I knew that was my race. And but I knew once I started my professional career, of course, I'm going to run both. And so yeah, I did. So I started really attacking the 400 my first professional year, and only because that was the first opportunity that I had to run it. But no, it wasn't. Nobody had to talk me into it. I mean, I always loved the 400, but I loved the 200 more at the beginning of my career.
And I should probably save this question, but I kind of just want to ask it now because I think this may have helped you. Is that why you think you had such a longevity in the 400? Because like we're gonna go into like what you did and like how you were so dominant in those races. But like when I remember back to the people that I watched running the 400, we started with Jeremy Warner. 2004, then LaShawn Merritt, 2008, and then
Yeah,
Karani
but
James, 2012.
you weren't even born when I was running.
Yeah, I wasn't, but it's crazy because people in the 90s they got to see every single year the Olympics, like Michael Johnson's winning the 400, 96 winning the 400, every single world championship winning the 400. It's not like that. Look, like LaShawn Merritt had that dominant time, but it's still the 400 is just so hard. I feel like to just be like dominant over such a long period of time. Do you think because you didn't run the 400 that much in college and you did most of your bulk races like afterwards in the pros, you were able to have that longevity, or what was really just the key to be able to be at that such high level for such a long time? Because that's insane.
No, I think that I attribute the longevity to just understanding, and this took some time, but understanding how to get the best from myself
Mm,
at championships. Um, when you understand that, and if you learn that early in your career, then you can apply that each year, and then you can just get better and better and better. So I was fortunate to learn early in my career how I get the best from myself under pressure at
mm,
championships, and I was able to apply that. So I attribute the longevity to that. I think um, I try to teach athletes that now. Whether it's athletes that I encounter in our business, whether they're NFL guys or NBA, if you can learn that early, how to get the best from yourself as an athlete, what it takes for you physically and mentally when you go into those championships, and the pressure's on and you want to win, and you're full of nerves. How do you manage those nerves, and how do put yourself in the right mental state to go in there and have that best performance at that championship at that time when it really counts, as opposed to having run, you know, 43.5, in, you know, Berlin or London or somewhere, the month
yeah.
before, and then get to the championships, and somehow, end up at 44.8, in the
Mm,
final. You got to be able to deliver that best performance, consistently, but and most importantly at the championships. And I realized, mentally how I needed to prepare myself and how I needed to approach those championships in order to do that. And I think a lot of people don't really truly understand that, but it's I needed to be really focused. The more focused, the more serious I was, the more tunnel vision I was, before the start of a race and a warm up and all of those things, the better performance I was going to be able to deliver. But you take someone like a Usain Bolt. Bolt knows how to, deliver his best. He and I would talk about this. Completely different, completely opposite approach, right?
mm,
Looks like he's not focused, looks like he's not taking it serious, but he is. And he told me, like, "Dude, if I were to do that," he's like, "when I've tried that, being really serious, like super focused, I get so nervous and I'm so tight, that I won't produce my best performance." So he knew that about himself. I knew how to get the best from myself. It's not one way that
yeah.
applies to everybody. It's different, but the key is knowing how what works for you as an athlete. And that's what I attribute, my longevity to. And I think, you look at Bolt and how long his career was and how consistent he was. It's because he knew how to get the best from himself. And a lot of athletes spend a lot of their career still trying to figure that out. And that's where you see that when you see athletes with a lot of inconsistency, like, oh man, this athlete's running really fast. Like I said, you're, killing it, a month before the championships, and then you get in the championships and not delivering that time, and wondering why. That's what you get when you haven't developed that understanding of yourself.
Yeah, and I think you see that range across all sports. I mean, with the Super Bowl just passed, like, I'm sorry, Tom Brady was not playing that good in the playoffs, but he's gonna get to the Super Bowl, and he knows how to get the best out of him and his teammates on the day when it counts the most. So I feel like you see that across all
Mm.
sports with the greats, and I think it's a skill that you can even bring into your job. To when you got to do at that
Definitely.
presentation, you got to make that sale, you gotta put there's something about it being like time. It's championship time. And if you've been an athlete before, like, that mode that you gotta put yourself in.
No,
But
absolutely.
moving forward too, I wanted to touch on your first Olympic experience in '92. So I saw that in '91 you won the world championships in the 200, but in '92 I read that you had like food poisoning and didn't advance to the final in the two, but you got gold in the 4x4. How did Talk about your Olympic experience, and like how did like not making that final in the 200 that year? How much did that fuel you? Because after that, I mean, you were already killing it, but after that, bro, you were like you went on a tear, like winning all golds and all the world championships, leading up to '96 and breaking world records. But yeah, what did you learn from that experience in '92?
Yeah, that was. I mean, that was a really really difficult experience. I mean, to be ready to be world champion at that point, I was undefeated for those 2 years of my. At that point, I was 2 years into my professional career, undefeated. You know, just can't be beat. And so, and a lot of people don't know this, but 1988, I was only 20, 21, just turned 21. Wasn't 21 yet, and uh, yeah, I was 21. Yeah, and sophomore in college, just finished my sophomore year. I I I was supposed to be on that Olympic team. I was supposed to be in Seoul. I ran 20.07 that year for 200. You know, 10.12. I ran 10.08 that year in 100. 45.23 and split 43.5 on the relay. I was just killing it. That
Oh
was a
my
breakthrough
gosh.
year for me,
Yeah.
and I felt like, yeah, I'm going to be on that team, in '88, and ended up with a stress fracture at NCAA's, and wasn't able to get on that team, wasn't able to make it through the trials, and then to get to '92, everything's great now, realize my potential, world champion, top of the world, and then to get there and yeah, and to get food poisoning right before the game started and just wrecked all of my preparation, wasn't even able to make it into the finals of the 200. It was a huge disappointment, and it's kind of like, as an athlete in the Olympic, in an Olympic sport, you know that if you're lucky enough to get there, you may not ever get there again.
Yeah.
So that's not guaranteed. I mean, it's with all due respect to, other sports, and I love, sports, NFL, NBA, all of that. I love it. But you don't make it to the Super Bowl this year, you can try again next year.
Yeah.
Ain't no next year in the Olympics. you know, it's 4 years. Some careers are 4 years,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
you may not ever get back there. So that's always in the back of your mind. So when I didn't make that final, you know, yeah, am I going to get back here? You start doubting yourself, and it wasn't until I started to really think, realistically, I allowed myself to be disappointed, but then I started to think, wait a minute, you know, Mike Marsh just won the Olympic gold medal. He's never beaten me before. In 2 years, he's been trying to beat me, still can't beat me. I've never lost to this guy, and he's the Olympic champion. So when the season starts next year, it's probably going to look like the last 2 years. I'm still going to be beating Mike Marsh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everybody else out there. And, you have to remind yourself that's the reality of the situation. So it was very disappointing, but I had to, remind myself that, I can still be the best. I might have to get through this disappointment, but you know, and that's what helped me to get through it. And then I knew about myself what motivates me, and I've always been motivated by my goals, and so I immediately set some new goals and just started to focus on that, and that's how I was able to get over that. But look, there's no doubt in that. That was a huge disappointment. And it all worked out in the end. Of course, got to Atlanta in '96 and Sydney in 2000, but at that moment in Barcelona, you got to be realistic. You're like, I may not ever get back here again, and that's devastating.
I think
Yeah.
it's important too to honestly be honest with yourself and be realistic. Like, no, dwell on it, but like I think too, just I think that's healthy to just be like, this is a really like big event and it's a privilege to be here. And yeah, I might not come back, but I'm gonna keep on doing whatever I gotta do
Yeah,
to get back. Like it's because
yeah,
it's a fragile situation.
yeah.
Then like how Aaron was saying, like after that, you went on a tear after that. Wasn't much losing after there. Went on a win streak in the 400. And you said that was like one of the biggest disappointments and hardest parts of like your track career. But after that, like it kind of seems like it was rainbows and sunshines, world records, gold shoes, everything like that. But was there any other like really hard moments in the midst of like you're still winning races and you're still doing all this? Were there any hard moments in your career where it was hard to get up some days or something like that? Was there something it was still like a struggle when you're still winning?
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't realize that, when you're winning all of the time, you know, I mean, that's not really what the fans want to see. I mean, like as a fan myself, you were talking earlier about, how I dominated the 400, and you start talking about Karani James and Jeremy Warren, and I prefer that because
Uh-huh.
that's what fans want to see. I mean, like I could see how people were probably like when I was running, like, all right, I really want to see somebody else win. You know, nothing against me,
Yeah.
but I could see them rooting for someone else because it's like he wins all of the time. I want to see somebody else win. I want to see some competition.
Yeah.
And so one of the difficulties when you are that person who is winning and dominant is knowing that, yeah, now there are people who are no longer rooting for you. When you were on your way up to the top, everybody was all for you.
Yeah.
And now someone new comes along and they're rooting for that person. And it's hard to sort of separate and think, and because at the end of the day, it's not like they don't like you. It's not like they hate you. They want to see somebody else win. They want to see that competition. So that gets a little bit tough. But then also, you know, one of the things that was really tough for me was dealing with the fact that I started to get criticized late in my career, and this is true. You're not gonna believe this, but it's true. Media would criticize me if I didn't win races by as much as I used to win them by.
Come on
and
now.
and I remember, yeah, and,
That's
and I
dope.
remember, I
That's how you know
remember
you're nice.
being really disappointed one day at practice about something about that. And my coach recognized it, and he was like, look, he's like, you have never run for anybody else but yourself. And he's like, and our objective is to win. And if you won, you won, and you need to be happy with that and not worrying about, people criticizing you for not winning races by enough. That's the position you put yourself in, and that's the bar you set. You set a really high bar, and that's the expectation people have. And but that's their expectations, and you've never been concerned with anybody else's expectations. And I was like, yeah, he's right. And that's all it took, and that again is great coaching, just
Mhm.
recognizing that, in me that day that I was just not really focused on practice because I was focused on thinking about, you know, I was thinking about like, yeah, why am I still out here doing this, when people are, criticizing me for something that's ridiculous as not winning races by enough,
Yeah.
you know, and but those sorts of things, yeah, you have to deal with that, and the expectation as well. You have to deal with a lot when it looks like it's all sunshine and rainbows, but yeah, it can be tough. And knowing, yeah, that you have your you're the highest paid. People think, you hear that, LeBron James got this contract or whatever, and he's the highest paid or whatever. That was me in the sport back then. Well, now there's all of this expectation, you
Mhm.
know, that you're going to do amazing things every single time you step on the track. And, you can't do amazing things every single time, and you have to, it's hard to sort of balance that, knowing what the expectation is out there, but knowing, what your goals are too, and being able to be stubborn enough to say, you know what, I'm going to stick with, what I want to do and what I know in the long run is going to be best for me. And I'm going to take this hit right now of criticism or whatever it is. But in the long run, I know this is what's going to be best.
Yeah. You can't run great every single time, but you sure came close in your day for sure. I would say too, I was going into it like, so 92 you go through that Olympics, and then 93 you get gold in the 4 by 4, and 95 that's when we see you do that 4-2 double and you get gold in both. Was that like a tune up for Atlanta? Were you already thinking like, hey, in Atlanta I want to be the double gold in the 4 and the 2? Was that just the plan all along?
Yeah, that was a plan all along. And I mean, back then, because it wasn't a standard double, the 2-4, the schedule typically, just wouldn't allow for that double. They were both so intermingled with a 200-meter semifinal on the same day as a 400-meter preliminary round or quarterfinal round, or, it was just all mixed up. And I had to try to convince the International Olympic Committee and the Track and Field Federation to come together and work together and change the schedule in '96 for the games, to allow me to be able to do both. And I was caught in a bunch of a political, issue between the IOC and at that time the IAAF.
Mhm.
Um, so the only way and what happened was, that was a lot of news about that, and the organizers for that '95 World Championships came forward and said, hey, you know, they may not be willing to change the schedule for you, but we're going to make our schedule conducive to a 200, 400 double. So if you want to do it, you can do it here. And of course, that then served as an opportunity. I always wanted to. And so, of
Yeah.
course, I was going to do it. Then that also gave me the opportunity. Like, if I win both of them, then they're going to have to change the schedule for Atlanta. They can't
Yeah.
not at that point. And then, of course, I did win both of them and just missed the world record in both the 4 and the 2. And so, of course, then there was a no-brainer that they were going to change the schedule.
Like you
And
said, you
yeah, and
got
it gave us an
rivalries.
opportunity to figure out my coaching out, sort of, what's this going to, kind of look like, from a competition standpoint, but also then knowing that, okay, now for '96, what are we going to need to do, from a training standpoint, because it's going to be even harder in Atlanta.
Oh, I just want to get now. I want to talk about those gold spikes over your left shoulder in the top of your shelf. I want to talk about those right there. Like, is that your favorite race? '96 in Atlanta. Like, I think that's probably a lot of people's favorite races that they look back on. But '96 in Atlanta and that 2 and the 4. Would you say those are your two like favorite races and favorite races that you ever ran?
It's hard to say, to call out a favorite, because each race is special, man. You take, we talked about '92, like at the time when I won that gold medal as a part of the 4x400-meter relay in Barcelona, I didn't care anything about that medal. It meant nothing to me. I was so disappointed about the 200. But, now looking back on it and how difficult of a decision it was for me to actually even go out there and be a part of that relay, because of how much pain and hurt I was feeling from the 200,
Yeah.
that medal is very special for me. Of course, '93, that's my first 400-meter world championship. '91 was my first world championship ever. It's special for that reason. My worst performance championship ever by far was '97, because I was injured. If you go back and look at that race, and it at 150 meters to go, my quad, which I had injured earlier in the year, pulls me again, and I have to almost stop, and I'm thinking my race is over, and it let go. But by that time, now I'm in sixth place, and then I have to start running again and try to get back in the race, and I get back in the race and win it. That race time was horrible. from by my standards, but that race was very special for me. I shouldn't have even been in that race.
Yeah.
So, they're all special. Of course, 96 was special. It was home Olympics, made
Yeah.
history. You know, each one of them is special, man. It's really hard to pull one out.
What did it mean, like that one being in the USA? Like, what was that like? Because I feel like after '96, when you won the 4 and the 2 in Atlanta with the gold spikes on, I feel like you were already destroying competition before that. But I feel like that is what raised awareness for like the average fan. What did it mean to just be in the US for the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously very special to be, and I was really lucky that the timing just worked out where the US was hosting an Olympic Games um, right in the middle of my career and when I'm probably at my
Yeah.
absolute best. I wasn't so young that I was still a little inexperienced. I was old enough, but not too old, where I was
Uh,
right in the middle of my career in that sweet spot, and that coincided with that game. So the timing couldn't have been better. And it was great for me, um, you know obviously from a branding marketing standpoint, and being
Yeah.
able to go on from there and do great things. It's done a lot for me. um, you know I it was, I think back, yeah, walking out there into that stadium every round, man, that the crowd was amazing. It was just like every time I walked out there, the crowd just would erupt just because I walked out into the stadium. That just gave me it just gives you so much motivation, and inspiration. Obviously, it's a tremendous amount of pressure as well, but I just soaked it all up, man, and just used it. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I just can't wait to see another Olympics in the US. And I'll just think like the closest thing I could think of is when Mo Farah was dominating and they had the London Olympics and he won the 5K and the 10K. So have like an American double win like that, that would be amazing to see in the home country. And I could just see how much excitement it would bring.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing experience, and yeah, super excited that I'm on the board for the 28 Olympics, and we'll be right here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That'll be cool. And then of course we got the World Championships coming up in Eugene next year. So some amazing opportunities for athletes to to be able to, and hopefully the sport can support this. And this is what getting back to that point, the athletes will do their thing. We've got a championships coming up here. As a sport, we have to, use that to really try to get this sport back to some prominence, and put these athletes in a position where they can really, capitalize on that, and where people know, and appreciate their performances.
I want to talk about as you start to close out your career and 1999. That's when I believe you got the world record in the 400, 43:18. Crazy. Only one man has ran faster than that so far since then. Just 2000, you go out, you win the Olympics in the 400 at that time as well. Like, what was it like after that? 2001, I think you ran like something else, but then after that, you retired. What was it kind of like to just go out on the mountaintop, like in a way, like you didn't go back, have like your Wizards year, like Michael Jordan. You kind of just left it and went out like Peyton Manning after winning the Super Bowl. Was that kind of like the plan when you were like after 2000? Like, I think I'm kind of just cool. I'm cool now.
I had decided already after '96 that I was going to compete for another 4 years, compete on another Olympics. My plan was to defend my 400, 200 meter both um, gold medals. And at the trials, I won the 400 and then got injured in the 200 in the final. So I wasn't able to make the team in the 200. But nobody had ever repeated as 400-meter Olympic champion. And so that became the goal. And I also, after '96, I was really focused on that world record as well for the
Mm.
400. I wanted to make sure I got that done before I ended my career. After I did that, and then I was like, okay, I've got that now. There's not going to be really anything else for me to really focus on any more goals for me after 2000. So I had already decided that that was going to be the end for me.
Hey, and switching gears a little bit, we were talking about the '90s. This was like the golden age. You know, we had you, we had Otto Bolden. You low key had like a couple like rivalries and beefs. Um, why don't we see that today? And what kind of was that like? Because I was seeing like you and Donovan Bailey racing the 150, like the promo shot of you and Maurice Green before that 200
That's
is
great.
amazing. Like, why don't we see things like that anymore?
I think it's just because it just isn't the focus anymore again on the competition and incentivizing athletes to compete against one another. I mean, I had all kinds of rivals. I mean, yeah, and I mean, yeah, me and Mo Green, me and Donovan Bailey, Quincy Watts, Butch Reynolds, Antonio Pettigrew, Frankie Fredericks, Otto. I mean, I had all kinds of rivals throughout my entire career. Every year it was somebody else.
Hmm.
And a lot of times there was, and Carl Lewis even, a lot of times there was, real beef, there, for one reason or another. And then a lot of times, there was a tremendous amount of respect. Like Quincy and I had some serious battles, but there was always a tremendous amount of respect between Quincy and me, you know, and we talk about that to this day, and Frankie and Otto as well. Um, but I think that there just isn't that incentive anymore. Those meet organizers wanted those matchups. And, if I can remember, I mean, I always, throughout the season, I'd run so many fours and so many twos, and in beginning before the season would even start, we would map out, all right, here's where we want to run fours and here's where we want to run twos. Usually in a build up and to make sure that we're ready for whatever the championship was that year, whether it was a world championships or an Olympics or whatever. In some situations, we might go to a meet organizer and say, okay, Michael wants to run the four here. We start negotiating. And then he finds out that, oh, Frankie's going to run the 200 here. We would like you to run the 200 against him. Okay,
Uh,
that's part of the negotiation now. All right, now we're
Yeah,
negotiating for me to run a race that I really didn't want to run, but you want me to run it. Let's negotiate that, And they were like, we want to make it worth your while to run the 200 here against Frankie because that's a matchup that our fans want to see, and we know we got to pay for that. Okay, deal.
yeah.
Now it's done. Now there isn't enough money in the sport even for those organizers to be able to even do that. And they don't even care anymore. It's just like, hey, what do you want to run? Oh, I'm gonna run this. Okay, yeah. Instead of, if I'm a meet organizer, I want the matchups. I'm going out actively recruiting and incentivizing those athletes. Hey, come here and run the 100 against the best in the world. But if I'm asking you to just do it, and you're not going to be paid well to do it, I'm not going to blame those athletes. You hear it all of the time, people and fans in the sport saying, oh man, why is he ducking this athlete? Why isn't he running? Would you expect him to just go there and put it on the line, and run in the hottest race of the year and not be incentivized to do that?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? I
yeah,
don't blame those athletes for like, well, hey, if I'm not going to be paid well, I'm going to focus a lot more on just running the races I need to run to get ready for the championship because I know that that's where I need to be ready. And that's when, if I can win there, that's where I'm going to get financially compensated, I mean, look, people don't understand a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with the sport, but it's weird to me because I know the behind the scenes that, when
Mhm.
people criticize these athletes, if they're not being incentivized and they're not being rewarded for getting out there and putting on that show, it's not worth their while to go out there and put themselves through that.
I
So
really like how you brought up that point because I think that's a constant conversation that people always have, like in the track world, and just like fans of just general, just like why are people like ducking each other? And the point that you just made of like people really getting that incentives to do that kind of just reminds me of how UFC has become so successful right now, as they're really trying, the people are trying to get up and fight the best, and it's similar to that boxing mentality as well. And I think
yeah.
get track and boxing are very similar and in those type of ways. And yeah, it's a great to hear from you just overall. But as we just start closing out and these like close out questions and get towards the end, we also want to ask too, like you had the world records in the 400 and the 200, but they both went down by Usain Bolt 1919 and in the two, and Wayde Van Niekerk 43.0 3,
Three.
something like that.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
Yeah.
But like, which were you most surprised by, or what was like most exciting watching, that 200 or that 400, or was it equal?
Yeah, so the 200, and I was commentating right at the time of both of those. I was in the stadium for both of those. The 200, I mean, everybody knew that was going when it because we had seen Usain Bolt that year. Just you just knew it's like he's
Yeah,
absolutely gonna break this world record. And he actually the first time 1918 was the second time he broke it. The first time he ran 19.31. I mean, he was just underneath it. But um, but that one was predictable. Wayde Van Niekerk, come on. I mean, Otto kind of predicted. He thought it might go down. We didn't know who it was going to be. You remember that race was incredible because it was LaShawn Merritt, Karani James,
yeah,
both defending, previous Olympic champions, and Wade drew lane 8 out there, and out in lane 8. At that point, I thought it's still going to be this is going to be an amazing race. But I didn't expect a world record. But as I was watching it and I saw him, I knew when I could see what he was doing when he took off. I was like, okay, so he's just going to run all out and he's going to try to hold on and make them try to take them out of their race. And I could see LaShawn getting out of his race because I know what kind of race LaShawn runs. I talk to him all the time. He trains at MJP. I know what he's going to do, and I knew what he was. And I was like, LaShawn's not running his race today. I could tell. So I was like, well, they're probably not going to catch him. But then when he came off the turn, coming home, and never broke form,
yes.
I was like, this is 42 seconds right here. And
Yeah.
yeah, 43:03.
That was definitely both of those records are two records that I always thought I would never see really go down. I don't know if anyone is it possible to break 43 in the 400 because it seems like everybody get injured if they go under 43.4.
That's a high level. That's high performance right there. That's high performance.
Yeah.
I think I've talked to Wade about this, and he thinks he can do it. I'm a little bit skeptical simply because he would need to. He can do it. He has the speed, he has the strength, and he has the speed endurance to be able to do it. It's different when I mean, he hit everything right that day because he was in lane 8. If
Hmm.
you're in it, so he was just running, and which is not easy to do. He was executing, but when you are in the middle of the track, you're executing and you're racing. You're racing the other people, and when you're racing the other people, you're making adjustments, and that makes it really difficult, and that can make you end up running slower than you're actually capable of running. In order to run 42, he's going to have to do something he's never done before. Um, I mean, it might happen, but I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see. I don't know when y'all's podcast comes out, but today news just came out that he changed his coach. He's with Lance Browman now,
Oh,
That's the coach of Noah Lyles, right?
and he's talking about yeah. So he'll be training with Noah. That's going to help him a lot, and I think a lot of people don't really know this. And what I've gotten to know with just getting to know Wade is he's kind of quiet, but he's got like beast mode, approach to the sport. I mean, he has like that kind of like it's very it's kind of suppressed, but it's there where he's just really ambitious and he wants to make his mark on the sport, and he knows that in order to make his mark on the sport, for example, we talked about this. If he wins the Olympics this year, he will become the second person to defend their Olympic,
yeah.
gold medal, but he won't be the first. He's not the
Hmm.
first person to break the world record. He's not the first. He wants to be the first or something. He's told me that, like, hey, I want to run 42, and I respect that. I mean, it's basically saying I want to be better than you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he put it in a really eloquent way, saying, it's an honor to you, but I want to be better than you. And how can you not respect that?
Hey, and now that since we're just on this topic, we can't talk about the four without talking about Michael Norman. I mean, last
IE
year,
stand up.
yeah, he opened up with what was that like 43.4, and now there's
2019.
like, oh wait, what?
2019.
Oh, 2019. I'm sorry, 2019. But when we had Otto too, we were talking about this, how there's potential for him to do something that's never done and maybe come down to the one after he's done with the four. Is that something that you can see him doing in his future? He running a 9.8. He ran a 9.86 in 2020, and he's ran 43 low already. He's going to be competing at the Olympics with Wade. Where do you see Michael Norman in that conversation?
I can't wait to see the Michael Norman, Wayde Van Niekerk, Fred Curley. I can't wait to see that. I think,
Stephen
that
Gardner.
400 is going to be, if everybody's at their best and everybody's healthy, that's going to be amazing. I think, Michael Norman is a huge talent. There's no doubt about it. I mean, nobody else out there can match his speed as a 400-meter runner. There's nobody else out there like that. So he's got amazing talent. I think he's more talented physically than Wade. But the one thing about Michael that is a question mark is his ability to get into a big championship and deliver,
Mm-hmm.
and whether he has that mentality, and that sort of mindset, you know, and it may be something where he has to mature before he gets there, or will he ever get there? Does his personality lend itself to producing the kind of performances that he's capable of? And we'll have to see that. We haven't seen it yet. But he only had the one opportunity so far, the World Championships in 2019. And that was a odd situation where he left a lot of question marks when he sort of jogged, the
Yeah.
final, and then, and what was, he left even more questions with his interview afterwards. We after he did that, though, because he was a favorite for a medal there, and then, the questions afterwards, he didn't really give a good, clear answer that made people go, "Oh, okay, now I see what happened." There was like, okay, even more questions. So he's got some things to prove, but uh, I wouldn't bet against him because he's got the talent, and um, I've only talked to him once, but he seems like he's got his head on right, and it works really hard from what I understand. And he's coached by Quincy Watts, which, I mean,
Mm.
that's a huge advantage right there.
Yeah, definitely. Michael Norman is one of a kind. And Empire, Vista Marietta, stand up, most definitely. And then switching gears real quick, this is definitely not really a running question, but MJ, Michael, I feel like that's such like definitely when you get to such a level, it's so elusive, you know? Like, I don't know. I feel like there's just so many great and GOAT MJs. I'm just curious, like, who is your favorite MJ that's not you? Like, we can go Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Michael B. Jordan. We can even go Magic, like, or you can go Mary Jane, but from Spider Man. But like, who would you say is? Who would say who's your favorite MJ that's not you?
I would probably be partial to Mary Jane first, but I'm a Superman fan as opposed to a Spider-Man fan. So, but nah, I've always been a big fan of Michael Jordan, just in the way that that striving for excellence. I saw that back in the day, when our careers coincided, and just being around him, I saw that then. But I think that most people didn't understand just how deep that went until they saw the documentary
Yeah,
last year. That sort of singular focus on and on excellence. Not just you know being good enough to win, but being as good as you feel you could possibly be. And I've always appreciated that about him. Then in terms of his understanding of a brand, as an athlete, and
yeah,
how
yeah.
to build a brand, that's something that, a lot of athletes who've come after him have aspired to, and a lot of us have learned from.
Yeah. I was gonna ask. This is another question, kind of left field. How can you describe your experience on Celebrity Apprentice? You had a short TV stint, and I don't feel like a lot of track athletes don't. We don't see a lot of track athletes come on TV. What was it like just being around all those different
I like that
celebrities?
show. When Little John was on there, that was like my favorite season with Little John on Celebrity Apprentice. It was a great show.
It was an interesting experience for me. It was right kind of at a time when I had spent so much of my life at that point after my athletic career, building my business and I built my television career and all of the things that I was doing. I felt like you know I haven't really been challenged like I was challenged during my sports career. When I was an athlete, as a track athlete, you never know what the challenges might be. This year, it's a new athlete that you got to beat. Next year, it's an injury you got to overcome. And there was
Uh,
all these challenges that I had to overcome, which is a very rich experience for learning and making yourself better. And at the time that I went on the Celebrity Apprentice, I had been, I think 9 years at that point removed from my career. And over those 9 years, you know, I was setting up, everything I wanted to do. It's like, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. I want to work with these people. I'll bring these people in. I'll hire them. Everything. I was controlling everything. I was in control of everything, which is a great place to be in, no doubt.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but that doesn't challenge you as much. So I felt like when they approached me originally, I said no. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, that'll be an interesting challenge for me because every day you don't know what's going to be thrown at you, and you've got to respond. And
mm.
so it was an interesting experience for me, and I try to put myself in situations like that from time to time where I'm challenged to rise to an occasion in something that I don't control.
And then parlaying off of that, like you were saying, like going after new challenges, is there anything else that you want to do, like in the running world, that you haven't done yet? Like I seen you wrote a book, like you've done so many different things, managing and everything, being a commentator. Is there anything maybe like making a movie? I don't know, producing a movie or something, or anything along like something that you want to do in the track world that you haven't done yet?
No, I think, in terms of my life and my career, I'm doing what I want to do now. And I started a new company last year, a new tech startup. That's interesting. It's kind of, as an entrepreneur, I've started businesses, but being in the tech startup space is very, very different.
Okay.
That was a new challenge. And so far, I'm loving it. So when opportunities come up, I take them on. I consider them and decide whether it's something I want to take on. In the track world specifically, um, you know, I, I love this sport. I would love the opportunity to give these athletes, the platform that they deserve and be able to take this sport to a point where, you're not complaining about, a world record being number six on the, top 10 list when it, deserves to be number
Yes.
one. But that, I'd have to see that opportunity. If I ever see that opportunity, I'll take it to create that sort of platform. But I need to see that opportunity. I haven't seen that opportunity yet, but if it ever comes, I'm always looking for it because that would
Mm.
be my dream to be able to take this sport to a level that it that it deserves to be. Um, if I see the opportunity, I'm gonna take it.
All right. Well, we're gonna be grinding. We're gonna be grinding for you. Okay. We're gonna be
I
grinding.
appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Uh, th-
uh, I was just gonna ask the next question we always ask: who should we have on the next podcast? Any recommendations?
It depends. So it depends. You guys seem to be, you seem to talk a lot about, the state of the sport, and sort of how to, and you're obviously fans and want to see the sport elevated. I think, having, somebody like, a Sevco or, administrators in the sport,
uh,
Max from USA Track and Field, have those people on and ask them the hard questions, and ask them, those questions. Why are these athletes not being, what can we do? What are you guys' plans? What are you doing to try to move this sport ahead? I think, your viewers would enjoy hearing that. But purely on the entertainment side of things, no allows.
Man,
I'd
he
have
gotta
no
come
Hey,
on.
qualm.
He gotta come on now. Otto
that's
Boulder
two
said the same
people.
thing. He gotta
That's
come
two
on.
people.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
DM
no,
him
he's
this.
very entertaining. I'd love to see it. So hopefully, good luck with you guys getting him on. Hopefully you get him on.
And then one more before we get to our last question, because I think this was just really fun. Since we're recording during Black History Month, I kind of want to ask everybody, like, what are your like top 3 favorite Black movies? We were talking about this in our last podcast. Mine's like Glory Road, uh, what Roll Bounce, and Love and Basketball are definitely like some of my top threes. I think Aaron was saying Boys in the Hood. What is like some of your top 3 favorite Black movies?
Yeah, I'd have to say, and Boys in the Hood is right up there. I mean, that's one of my favorites. Boys in the Hood. Uh, Malcolm X,
Hmm.
Spike Lee's Malcolm X,
Yeah.
great movie. Um, and then you know what? Just when I was a kid, um, the old Bill Cosby, Sidney Poitier had a series of movies. Uptown Saturday Night. There was some really crazy. It's kind of almost like the in the black exploitation, but kind of a little bit past that point. You know,
Mhm.
you guys wouldn't know anything about that because you're way too young. But look it up. Google that.
We'll do.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to watch that.
And then last question we always ask everybody. It's kind of deep, but I think it's a great question to end because it really describes you. What mark do you want to leave on the sport of track and field when it's all said and done and you did everything that you ever did? And in the sports world and in life, what mark do you want to leave?
You know what? I mean, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. I'm hopeful that, I mean, as far as my track career is concerned and my impact on the sport, I think, that's been done, so it's going to be whatever it is. History will judge you, on what you did in the sport. And hopefully I left a legacy of, raising the bar and excellence, not just as an athlete, but as a professional in the sport that others can follow. I had some great role models and examples myself, and people like Jackie Joyner Kersey as an athlete who I looked up to, and when I first got on the circuit and saw how she carried herself and what a professional she was, and how she strove for excellence as an athlete. And so hopefully I was able to do that for the next generation that came after me and others. Um, and in life, it's just hopefully I've been able to, and still will be able to leave a legacy of trying to leave the world better than I found it. And certainly for me, what's really at this point, and certainly from now until I leave this earth, is fighting for social justice for Black and Brown people in this
Man,
country.
thank you. I think you're doing all those things, and I think I'm so glad that you're able to share this time with us, even with the technical difficulties that we had in the beginning, that people don't know about, but we know about, and we're
Get it
able
together, man. Get it together. Get it together.
we're able to get through it. Though we really do appreciate it. It was truly was an honor to have you on the podcast, be able to sit down and talk with us. We would love to do something again for sure, and yeah, just I hope y'all liked it. I hope the listeners liked it, bro. Aaron, you have anything else you want to say before we sign off, bro?
Hey, it's
No,
an
I appreciate
honor.
it, man. Appreciate you guys, man, and keep up the good work, and wish you guys all the best.
Thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you. Honor to
Cool.
talk with Goat.
All right.
Everybody, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rate us, share it with your friends, and to everyone that listened this far into the podcast, we truly do appreciate you, and you are a day one homie, and we'll see you next time on a Two Black Tuesday.
Let's get it. Let's get it.